From Blackfoot to Teton, we've got your District 6 breakdown right here on the East Idaho Prepcast with Lance Taylor.
That's right. Welcome in. It's another edition of the East Idaho Prepcast here on IdahoSports.com, where we are talking everything in District 6, week in, week out. I'm Brandon Bainey, joined by Lance Taylor. Lance, what's going on today?
Not a lot. Just 1 week closer to football.
Yeah, well, you're going to be a busy...
based upon last week, a week closer to football.
Well, right. In District 6 specifically, we are closer to football because there weren't any District 6 teams that competed last week. And now this week, really the true week one of the high school football season, everybody's playing, which is exciting.
Yeah, they are. And we'll have a lot to talk about next week for sure.
Yeah, no doubt. So you're going to be a busy guy this weekend because we have the annual Rocky Mountain Rumble, which at times has incorporated states other than Idaho and Utah, but for the most part, at its true essence, it's kind of Idaho's best versus Utah's best. For someone who's never experienced the Rocky Mountain Rumble before, what are they in store for Friday and Saturday?
Well, they're in store for some very good football for one, but there's a lot of unknowns going into these games. Typically in the Rocky Mountain Rumble, you'll find one of two things. Either teams will come out very shy, trying to wait to see who throws the first punch, so to speak, while they learn each other, or they just come out swinging and just say, we're going to go for it. We're going to make them prove that they can stop what we're doing. So, but typically in the Rocky Mountain Rumble, games have been very high scoring as a whole. So look for teams to air it out.
We mentioned that the Utah schools come in with a little bit of it. Well, it's an advantage or a disadvantage, depending on how you look at it, because most of these Utah schools have already played 2 games.
That's right.
They start a little earlier than Idaho, which on the one hand, okay, they've got 2 games to work out the kinks. But on the other hand, their opponent, they don't have any way to scout out what the Idaho schools are going to do. So where do you fall? Is it an advantage for the Utah schools to have 2 games, or is it a disadvantage?
I think it's always an advantage when you've been able to get on the field. I just think that's always an advantage. There's a feel to the game, and I think that's always an advantage. But like you said, there is some offset with that. I know some of the Idaho coaches have had an opportunity to go down and scout some of these teams out, because every single Utah team coming into this tournament or into the Rocky Mountain Rumble, it's not a tournament, single game for each team, but all of them do have 2 games under their belts coming into this. None of them had a bye week or anything like that. And so Utah has had the opportunity to be scouted by Idaho schools, and we'll see what kind of role that plays and how the offset works.
Yeah, it's going to be pretty exciting to see how these Idaho schools stack up. IdahoSports.com will be broadcasting every single game from this year's Rocky Mountain Rumble. 4 on Friday, 4 on Saturday. The guy I'm looking at right now, Lance Taylor, he's going to be on the call along with Lauren Jensen for those contests. Let's talk about the venue, because in years past, it was held at Holt Arena in Pocatello on the campus of Idaho State University. Last year, because of the COVID-19 pandemic, ISU actually closed that facility. Nobody could use Holt Arena, not even ISU.
That's
so
right.
Holt Arena sat empty, and so we had to kind of scramble and adjust. But I think we found a great venue in that beautiful facility at Madison High School in Rexburg.
Oh, in Idaho, it's an unmatched high school facility. I mean, it is just a fantastic facility. There's nothing really that could be said more about it than it's beautiful. I mean, the score box or the broadcast booth is equivalent to a lot of your smaller colleges, and better than some. It's a great facility. It's a turf field. It's got a big replay scoreboard on the south end. I think the Utah schools that come up here are in for a big treat.
Yeah, I think it's going to be exciting to see the second year in a row at Madison High School. So let's dive into these individual matchups. It all starts Friday afternoon at 1:00. We've got Beaver High School from Utah taking on the Marsh Valley Eagles, a team that a lot of people think could win District 5 this year in the Class 3A ranks. But what do you think?
Well, Beaver's one of those schools that they're in the smallest school size for football in Utah. Utah does not have an 8-man football division. So those teams that cannot field an 11-man football team actually play 2 baseball seasons. They play a fall baseball season, a spring baseball season. So Beaver is the smallest of the school sizes that do play football. They're a school that's about half the size, if not maybe a little smaller than Marsh Valley. That, on that, Beaver comes in 2-0 after beating Kanab 28-0. That's a conference opponent for them, by the way. And then they went up and beat Grantsville, which is a bigger school than they are, 20-14. Grantsville would be more around the size of a Marsh Valley. And so Beaver comes in with those 2 wins under their belts, and they're ready to play. Marsh Valley's going to have to get out quick.
Yeah, so I guess what you're saying is it would be Beaver's more like maybe a 2A opponent here in Idaho, whereas
yes, a small 2A opponent. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, we've seen in the past 2A schools haven't had any problems.
Absolutely. Well, I grew up just south of Beaver there in Cedar City, Utah, as a little kid before moving to Idaho for my high school years. But Beaver, for those of you who don't know quite where it is, about an hour and a half north of St. George, Utah, kind of the playground for Utah during the wintertime. But it's up in the mountains. It's a cold climate, a lot of dairy farms, famous for its cheese, things like that. But the Beavers will be coming in. In fact, we have 2 schools that the mascot is the same as the name of the school. So coming into this Rocky Mountain Rumble this week. So not that means anything, just a funny side note.
And that's the kind of hard-hitting analysis the folks came for, Lance.
That's right. Well, you know what? Marsh Valley went 3-6 last year. They lost their finale to American Falls. But Marsh Valley came off of a great basketball season last year. And I think they really want to carry that type of momentum and mentality into all of their other sports. I'd like to see Marsh Valley have a very good year this year.
Yeah, and Marsh Valley, of course, a great baseball program as well. Their American Legion baseball team got all the way to the Northwest Regional Tournament, which was in Anchorage, Alaska this year. And so I know some of those guys that play both sports maybe were a little bit behind the 8 ball to start off with preseason practices.
Yeah, they were. And then, things don't slow down for them. Next week, they go up and play at Teton, non-conference game, but also 3A matchup. So Marsh Valley, they start right out of the gates here, meaning they're in the fastest heat, so to speak. You give it a track comparison.
Right. Real quick, talking about Legion baseball, can we just take a moment and applaud the Idaho Falls Bandits for winning the American Legion World Series for the second time in 3 years? And probably, Lance, honestly, they probably could have gone for 3 in a row had last year's American Legion World Series not been canceled. That's
right. So proud of these young athletes and what they've accomplished. If you go most places in the country, they'd say, well, where's Idaho Falls? Is that in Idaho? That's probably what you would get. And they have made not just Idaho Falls, but the whole state proud of what they've done.
Yeah, that's a combination of kids from all over the city, all different high schools coming together for a super team, essentially. So speaking of super teams, Sugar Salem, the Diggers have the second game at the Rocky Mountain Rumble at 4:00 on Friday. They will take on Morgan High School from Utah. I know some of the Digger coaches actually went and scouted Morgan in person, but what can you tell us about this matchup?
Well, we know what Sugar Salem brings to the table. Sugar Salem's a team last year that only returned 1 full-time starter and still went through in 1 state with just 1 loss on the season last year. They return a lot of players this year with experience, and this should be a very good team for them this year. Morgan is a good team. Morgan comes into here 1-1 on the season. They beat Bear River 39-5. We'll talk about Bear River here a little bit later as they come up to the Rocky Mountain Rumble as well. But then they lost to Snow Canyon out of St. George, 20-7. And Morgan, anytime you come in with a 1-1 like that, there's more questions than answers. And so I think this might be one of those games where both teams just come out swinging and just see who can land a big blow first.
Yeah, a lot of questions around Sugar Salem as well, as they lost so many talented players from last year's team. But as Coach Richens has demonstrated in the past, that doesn't necessarily mean that Sugar Salem's headed for a down year. They always seem to reload, right?
Well, the year, like I said, going into last season, they had lost 26 seniors from the year before, and they only returned 1 full-time starter on that team. And that full-time starter broke his collarbone in the second possession of the first game of the season. And they still went on, and they did lose to conference rival South Fremont, who was very good. But then Sugar pulled it together and went on to win the state championship again for the 3rd time.
Yep. So we did talk about at the Rocky Mountain Rumble how it is Utah and Idaho schools. But in our Let me make sure I got this right. The third matchup, Middleton against Elko, Nevada. Am I reading that correctly?
Well, I show Skyline and Green Canyon.
Yeah. Okay. Let me double check and make sure I'm looking at the right thing here. That might be a non-conference.
I show 3 games Friday, 4 games Saturday.
4 games Saturday. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm looking at the big broadcast schedule on IdahoSports.com where, by the way, Lance, opening weekend, really and truly, 18 games on the broadcast schedule for IdahoSports.com.
There'll be plenty to keep people busy.
Yeah.
If one's boring, you just switch to another one.
That's right. You could have your own personal red zone going. So
that's right. You certainly can. Yeah,
right.
yeah. I saw our third game on Friday as Skyline.
Yeah.
Your reigning 4A state champions against Green Canyon, another good-sized school who would be a 5A school if they were in the state of Idaho. They're out of Cache Valley, down by Utah State University.
Yeah, so tell us a little bit about Green Canyon in that Logan area.
Well, Green Canyon is 2-0 coming into this. They knocked off Crimson Cliffs 17-13. That's the newest high school down in the St. George area for those people that are looking, from a map perspective where that team happens to be. And then they beat Park City 19-17. So close game. So that's going to be a really tested team coming in. Green Canyon, they've played some close games, which mean they've had to manage the clock. They've had to be very picky on play selections, particularly towards the end of games and so forth. And so that's I think that's going to be a challenge that Skyline's going to have to overcome a little bit. Is you got a team that comes in and they know how to win if a game happens to be close. But Skyline, we know what Skyline brings to the field, and Skyline's a very, very tough team. I do expect Skyline to win this game.
Okay, because Skyline kind of has the same questions as Sugar Salem, where they are the defending champs at the 4A level, but they did lose so much talent. They do have some good linemen coming back, and Kenyon Sadiq, I think, is going to be a stud at wide receiver. But Skyline, I like that.
I think Skyline is a little bit like Sugar right now, where even when they lose a lot of players, they tend to reload rather than rebuild. And I really have a lot of confidence in Skyline this year.
Yeah, and Coach Berger and that coaching staff, one of the best in the state. So okay, so that's our third and final game. So 3 games Friday, 4 games Saturday.
Those games, by the way, are 1 p.m., 4 p.m., and 7 p.m.
Yes,
on Friday.
Plenty of time in the schedule. Okay, I think the most intriguing game to me, Lance, is the first game on Saturday at 11 in the morning. You've got Coeur d'Alene, the Coeur d'Alene Vikings coming all the way down to Rexburg to take on Lehigh. Tell us about that matchup.
Lehigh's a 6A school in the state of Utah. They are a very big school. They'd be the biggest high school in the state of Idaho. They did split last year, actually 2 years ago. But they're 1-1 on the season right now. They lost to Davis 21-14. That was an overtime game. Davis, another great big school. And again, for people who don't know where Davis is, that's Lagoon. The Farmington area, Lagoon, the amusement park. That's where Davis High School is. But so Lehigh, the north end of Utah County there. And then they went and beat Salem Hills, which is the south end of Utah County, 30-7. And so they're 1-1 coming into this. And again, we don't know, for sure what Coeur d'Alene brings to the table either. And I think of the matchups in this, in the Rocky Mountain Rumble this weekend, that might be the most intriguing of the matchups.
Yeah, I think Coeur d'Alene, I think is going to be pretty good again. They bring back a stud tight end, defensive end Cameron Cope, and a great running back Gunnar Julio, and they've got a big offensive line too. It's going to be nice for you to see Coeur d'Alene in person because they're kind of tucked away for most of the season, but the Vikings are actually coming down to an event that'll give them some exposure. And Coeur d'Alene has proven time and again that it doesn't really matter where the game's at. If it's a good competition, they'll travel.
Yeah. Coeur d'Alene is good, and they're willing to step out and go and face opponents that I mean when you think about it, these two opponents, if you were to drive, are about 14 hours apart. And that's pretty rare for high school teams, unless you're in some kind of a national tournament. And so the Rocky Mountain Rumble being able to bring some of these teams together like this, I think it's going to be good for both of them. That is one that I cannot pick a winner in that game. I'd like to see Coeur d'Alene, the Idaho team win it. But there's no question that that would be a game that if you had to put money down, you're going to want to do it on another game, not on that game, because who knows?
Yeah, real coin flip. So
Yeah.
I think our next game on Saturday also has the potential to go either way. It's at 2:00, and you've got, let me double check that time. 2:00, right?
Yeah, it is 2:00 for
Yeah,
Pocatello and Ogden.
Yes. So Pocatello High, a team that is favored to win District 5 in the Class 4A ranks, against Ogden, which is a pretty decently sized school from Utah.
Yeah, they are. Pocatello wants to get off to a good start because they go out to Twin Falls the next week, don't forget. But Ogden is a team that's 1-1 coming into this game. They lost to Canyon View. That's out of Cedar City, Utah, just north of St. George there. I lost 33-21, so that was a highly contested game. And then they beat Providence Hall 31-21. And Ogden it's kind of a weird scenario there. A few years back, Ogden went through a number of years where they did not have enough academically eligible players. And so what they did is they played as an independent down there. So they were not eligible for state tournaments, things like that, because they had too many players that were academically ineligible. So they couldn't represent the school, at least under the UHSAA, but they did allow them to play. They struggled for a few years, but now they're back in that lineup. And I really think that this Ogden-Pocatello matchup could be a very, very tight game.
Yeah, I know Pocatello expectations are high this year. They've put a lot of pressure on themselves, and it'll be exciting to see them. New quarterback this year, Zach Park, last year's quarterback, did return, but he's back at his natural position of wide receiver.
Yeah.
Ryan Payne moved from running back to quarterback. And the story is that the players initiated that. It wasn't the coaching staff. Ryan Payne and Zach Park went to the coaching staff and said, hey, we were kind of thinking, let's move us around. And they've been on board with it. So
Yeah. And when you can have the players on board, that's a full buy-in right there. And that gives your team great opportunities. Opportunities. Yeah. And, Pocatello, they're 6-3 overall last year. They lost to Bishop Kelly, 35-0, opening of the state. But Pocatello, I think you said it right. They've put a lot of pressure on themselves. They need some success in that program right now.
Yes, a little shot in the arm for sure. All right, our third game on Saturday is going to be at 5:00 Saturday evening. The Highland Rams from Pocatello, perennial power, taking on Alta High School from Utah. How do you see this one?
Yeah, Alta is a very, very good school. The Hawks they're one of those perennial powerhouses in the state of Utah most years. However, the last several years, they've kind of been a 500 team down there. Part of it is Bingham High School, who's been a nationally ranked team so many years in the top 10, is in that same conference. It's a 6A conference, and they just Bingham has just kind of run away with that for the last while. And so a lot of people kind of lost sight of what Alta can do. But Alta is a very, very good team, very good program, a lot of rich history there. And I think that's one of those that is going to be a big test for Highland. It's just going to be tough. That should be a good game. And I think we're going to see that game played in the trenches. I think that game is going to be very physical on the front lines, both sides of the ball. And that's one of the things that I think, we can look for. Highland 11-4 last year. They lost to Rocky Mountain at state. In fact, we talked about Coeur d'Alene just a minute ago. They also got eliminated by Rocky Mountain at state. And then, of course, Rocky Mountain, to win the state championship last year, beat Rigby out of that same conference. All three of those teams got eliminated by the eventual state champions. So Highland comes in, and I think Highland should be a pretty good team this year. But I think this game is going to be played and decided in the trenches.
Yeah, and you mentioned Highland and Rocky Mountain. They met up last week at Holt Arena last Saturday, and Rocky won a very close game, 12-7. But Highland was driving to score potentially the winning touchdown and just ran out of time right around midfield. But in last year at the Rocky Mountain Rumble, that really kind of defined Highland's season. They got absolutely smoked. It was their worst loss since the 1960s. And that's when they decided to make the quarterback change. Jack Whitmer had started the first game and a half as a junior. And he kind of at halftime, they kind of pulled him and went with Easton Durham. And now Whitmer's back for his senior season. It'll be nice to see how he rebounds in his second attempt at the Rocky Mountain Rumble.
Yeah, I think that was more than a wake-up call. That was a wake-up call with ice water being thrown on you in your bed kind of thing, And I think Highland will be be back and respond very well this year. I think we'll see a good Highland team. In fact, I really look forward, Highland Rigby, Highland Madison, those kinds of games this year.
Yeah, that conference is going to be fun to watch for sure.
Yeah.
And now we've got Madison, the host team, playing at 8:00, kicking off under the lights. They're going to host, you mentioned Bear River High from Utah, which is, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's pretty close to that Idaho border, right?
It is just right across from Malad, Idaho, and just kind of west of Logan there. Again, Cache Valley, where Utah State University is. Bear River, if there's potential for a blowout in this tournament, I think this is a game that will be a blowout. Bear River is 0-2, has not been competitive in either one of those games. On there, they lost to Morgan, who plays Sugar. On the first day, they lost to Morgan 39-5, and then they lost to Clearfield 14-27, a Clearfield team that's not that good. But Madison. I mean, Madison is coming off really a pretty abysmal season last year. You look at Madison and what they had last year at 2-7. They lost their finale to Bonneville, 4A opponent. And Madison is looking to have a good season this year. But I think this is the game. I think we will see Madison blow the doors off of Bear River. I think that'll be a high-scoring, one-way game to finish the Rocky Mountain Rumble.
Okay, that would be a great debut for new head coach Chandler Rhodes at Madison.
Yeah, it would be. It would be. And I think that is really what we're going to see. But I think our most competitive games, I think you're going to see Coeur d'Alene, Lehigh, Sugar, Salem, and Morgan, and then Highland and Alta. I think those are the games that could be very, very, from a score perspective, very competitive.
Yeah, I think the Rocky Mountain Rumble is going to be very exciting. And again, all 7 matchups at the Rocky Mountain Rumble will be streamed live at IdahoSports.com with Lance Taylor and Lauren Jensen. Each game is going to be fantastic, and I'm super excited for really.
I am. The weather's supposed to be really good, and which you can't always count on in the fall in Southeast Idaho. It's kind of like the spring in Southeast Idaho. It might be fantastic, it might be miserable, but it's setting up to be a pretty good weather weekend.
Yeah, I totally agree. Well, before we duck out, Lance, I did want to touch on just a couple of volleyball tournaments that I think are going to be pretty interesting. We've got the annual North-South Icebreaker tournament at South Fremont, which is a collection of 3A and 2A volleyball programs. There are 16 teams competing at this, it's a one-day tournament. It's Saturday only, so it's going to be sun-up to sundown volleyball action at South Fremont High. 15 of the 16 teams are varsity squads. South Fremont's JV is also competing. Just look at this list of teams: South Fremont, Salmon, Butte County, Soda Springs, Teton, Marsh Valley, West Jefferson, Ryrie, American Falls, Aberdeen, Filer, Firth, North Fremont, Chalice, Snake River. That is a loaded field.
That is a loaded field. Let's talk about South Fremont for just a moment, because South Fremont, this is a good opportunity for them to start their season off hot. And to make a statement. They're in a conference. The Mountain Rivers Conference has been dominated by a Sugar Salem program, and in that type of a program, oftentimes if you want to get to state, you got to do it through the back door, because that front door entrance is usually occupied, and they've got to step up and get a good start to their season and really get that good mentality going in to conference play this year, because we know Sugar's going to be good, returning most of those players from that team that outside of 2 losses to Highland, which have some asterisks by them. Outside of that, only lost one set within one game within their sets all year long, and went 3-0 in every matchup at the state championship. So I'm happy for South Fremont to get this going, do it on their own floor, and see how they can begin their season.
Yes, strangely enough, Lance, about the only team that's missing from District 5 and 6, 3A, 2A is Sugar Salem. They're not going to be in this tournament. So, but I think that'll be good. It'll create opportunities for a lot of other teams. I think the team to keep an eye on that tournament is going to be Filer, coming over from District 4. They did really well at state last year, and they've got some good athletes back.
Yeah, Filer has some very good athletes on that volleyball team this year. Same with their girls basketball team. A lot of those players will cross over to that team as well. And I think we're going to see a very good Filer volleyball team this year.
Yep. So that's the North-South Icebreaker Volleyball Tournament Saturday at South Fremont, pretty much all day. It's going to be nonstop action. And then I wanted to mention the Rigby Trojans are kicking off their season in a pretty tough way, the volleyball team. They're going to go down to Skyview High in Utah and take on they're the only non-Utah team competing at this tournament. And as we talked about, Utah has about a 2-week head start on everybody else. This is going to be a good challenge for the Rigby volleyball team right out of the gate.
Well, and not only that, but Rigby and Skyview will play in football this Friday as well, and that is going to be a massive matchup. Skyview comes in 2-0. They beat Harriman 21-10, beat Bonneville of Utah 28-18, and last year they went 13-0 and won the state championship for their division size in Utah, and coming up to face a very, very tough program in Rigby. That should be a sensational matchup as well.
Yeah, Skyview High from Utah is kind of a football powerhouse. I think they had 5 or 6 guys go play high-level college football off.
Yes, yeah. Skyview's a very good. Well, that's the team that came and just laid an absolute licking on Highland last year in the Rocky Mountain Rumble. So I think that's a good matchup, and kudos to both schools, Rigby and Skyview, to step up and not be willing to just take a patsy game to start the season, but to actually play a very, very tough game. That's kudos to both of those programs, because a lot of teams, particularly when you're good, sometimes will look for kind of that, what you'd call a warm-up game, kind of that, well, if worse comes to worse, we're still going to kill them, and we'll just kind of see some little holes we need to fill, during the next week. But these two teams are going to have to come out and play very hard to pick up a victory.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. I'm excited for the opening weekend. Well, I mean, we had week 0 stuff last week, but really and truly, this is the opening weekend of high school athletics. In District 6, Lance, there's going to be a lot of good stuff to keep an eye on. Plenty to talk about next week, right?
Oh, plenty to talk about next week. Also, just as a side note, I was with Paul Kingsbury, of course, the owner of Idaho Sports this week, and your official sponsor for this podcast now is Pure Adrenaline Motorsports.
Awesome.
And all you got to do is go to pureadrenalinemotorsports.com. And you can see what they have online as far as motocross gear, snowmobile gear, glasses, goggles, you name it. So Pure Adrenaline Motorsports, we're glad to bring them on as a sponsor.
Awesome. That sounds great, Lance. Yep, there they are right there. So yeah, again, if you're watching the video on our YouTube channel or our Facebook page, you just saw the glasses that Lance was showing out there. You can also get this podcast audio only at our website, IdahoSports.com. Across the navigation bar on the homepage, there's a drop-down menu with all the Prepcasts. Just click on East Idaho Prepcast. You can also download this podcast wherever you get your podcasts. All right, Lance, thanks for stopping by, and then let's get to it. Good luck this week at the Rocky Mountain Rumble.
Yeah, you as well. It'll be fun to talk next week and to see what happened.
Yep.
Real quick though,
sure.
we do just got to give a quick pick for the games.
Okay.
Marsh Valley over Beaver is what I have. Sugar Salem over Morgan. Skyline over Green Canyon. I hate to say it, but Lehigh over Coeur d'Alene. Pocatello over Ogden. I believe Alta will probably come in and win that game against Highland, and I believe Madison will absolutely blow the doors off of Bear River.
That I agree with all of those picks, except I think I like Green Canyon to knock off Skyline. I'm going out on a limb there, and I think Coeur d'Alene. I like what the Vikings got. I think Coeur d'Alene can get a win as well. So
yeah, and they very well can. Our picks are written in soap, not stone. So
no, I'm gonna make a note of it, and we'll hold you to it next week. We'll see how many you got.
We will. Maybe we'll do a dinner over it or something.
Okay, that's
I win, you, or the heads I win, tails you lose kind of thing. So you're paying either way.
Little sleight of hand there for sure.
That's right.
All right, that'll do it for this edition. Yeah, that'll do it for this edition of the East Idaho Prepcast. For Lance Taylor, I'm Brandon Benny. Thanks for tuning in. Enjoy the opening weekend, everybody. We'll see you back here next.